All right, so let's talk about testing. This is the first workshop about somehow evaluating the quality of your software. From a high level point of view, I mean, I think that's pretty natural that we should test our software, right? I mean, when you buy something, when you buy a new car, you assume that someone has tested the car, right? The brakes, the different aspects of the hardware. So the same rule applies to the software. Software should be tested. It should be tested because of multiple reasons. First of all, first of all, to ensure the quality of what you are building. So if I'm creating a new component, I want to make sure that that my component is not gonna break. Yeah. Then testing is also very important as a source of documentation on your code, as we will see. If you land on a new project and you don't know what the hell a component called user does, so reading the test may give you a good overview about the behavior of that strange component. Yeah. It goes without saying that testing is a huge wall. We may run a bootcamp just to talk about testing. There are multiple ways of testing. I would like to introduce different types of testing in an upcoming workshop, not today. At least I'd like to give you some keywords in case you're curious about testing and you want to explore it a bit more. Today I would like to talk about unit testing, which is probably the most fundamental way of checking the quality of the software you generate. Unit testing is essentially, evaluating functions. Yeah, I got a function. If I got a function with that input, then I will get this output. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. There is something important here. Obviously, learning how to test is vital, but there are again multiple ways of testing, and probably you've heard about something called TDD. Guys, have you heard about TDD before? Test driven development. Yeah. And can anyone tell me what the hell TDD means or implies? Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, Panos. So telling someone, hey, testing is an important part of the coding journey, I think that's pretty simple, right? Even if I tell my mom, who has no idea about how to code, that what they build needs to be checked, needs to be evaluated, I think that's pretty natural. However, TDD is a mind-blowing principle. It's a mind-blowing principle. Let me refer again to the car example. So if I'm BMW and I'm building a new car, so what are the steps? First of all, I build a car, however the process is of building a car, and once the car is ready, I test it. Yeah, I check that the brakes work, but first of all, I need to build the brakes, right? I need to build the brakes. And then I will do some crash tests. I want to make sure that if I crash my car against a wall at 20 miles per hour, the driver is not gonna die, right? At that speed. So, you build your stuff and then you test it. Probably that principle applies to every single industry in the world when talking about hardware, about goods. However, when talking about software, it's different. Of course, you can do that. You can build your software and then you can test it. However, the recommended way of dealing with the quality of your software is based on the opposite. That means, first of all, you test something that doesn't exist and then you build it. That's mind blowing. That requires a lot of abstraction, guys. Because how thinking again on the car example. Okay, I'm going to test the brakes before they even exist. What the hell that means? That's very weird. That's very weird. And I have to admit that it's still very weird when talking about software. The difference is when talking about software, it makes sense, and when talking about hardware, it doesn't really make sense. Not that much, at least. Historically speaking, all the workshops we've covered so far and all the workshops that we'll be dealing in the future, I try to demonstrate the value of what we are learning with some example, like, hey, for instance, the REST operator. Why should we use the REST operator or the REST parameter? Because it simplifies the process of gathering arguments, whatever. Yeah, we try to see the value of all the techniques. However, with TDD, I have to admit, I'm not gonna be able to tell you the value of using TDD. But if you want one advice from me, just do it. I don't care. I don't care if you don't appreciate the value of TDD. Just do it. Just do it. That's the way I learned TDD. You know, when I started to code, of course, TDD was there already, and I know that was important, but I struggle a lot. Every single developer, or the immense majority of developers, struggle to admit, yes, I see the value of TDD, because it's tough. It's tough. It makes everything just much more complicated. It doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound natural for humans who are used to build and then test, not on the other way around. However, I don't care. Someone told me, after asking many people why should I use TDD, and yeah, they tell you theoretical advantages, but you got the feeling that didn't pay off. Someone told me, I don't care. I don't care. If you don't trust TDD, just do it. Just do it. Your ability, guys, your ability to succeed as a developer and to make a lot of money, blah, 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 will depend on your ability to do TDD. So I don't care if you don't trust it, because it's very hard. It's very hard to get the advantages of TDD. It goes without saying that once you've been doing TDD for, I don't know if it's weeks, months, or years, probably that depends on the person, at some point in your life, you will realize how beneficial TDD is. But you definitely need to experience that by yourself. You need to run probably hundreds of tests until you see the value of TDD. So the goal of this session is not necessarily about trying to convince you why TDD helps you. I will try. It goes without saying, I will try. But even if at the end of the session you believe that TDD is something weird and it's not for you, seriously, that doesn't really matter. Just start doing TDD as soon as possible. Yeah, and it goes without saying that it's very weird. I mean, on every job interview, at least as a senior developer, you always ask the candidate, do you follow TDD? What do you think about TDD? Yeah, that's great, blah, 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 blah. All right, it's great. Yeah, it's great. Let's do it. And then you give a laptop to the candidate, and then you see how in many occasions, they fail. They fail to do TDD. Yeah? Sky told me that they hired me because of my TDD ability, because my ability of writing TDD, because they had interviewed like 20 people and no one was able to write TDD. Yeah? So once again, guys, do TDD. Regardless of whether you believe it or not, do it, because that will help you to progress more in less time on the industry. And of course, that will open your mind to a different way of coding and facing coding, and that essentially you'll become a better developer in the long term. So TDD, long story short, is first test and then build. Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna do today. I'm going to create a JavaScript function. Imagine that we are building an app and we want to build a component to set, to welcome our user. Welcome to the app, right? The message that you get in some applications. So let me create a new file and let me call it, I don't know, welcome.js. Yeah? That file will have a function to welcome users depending on some data, some input, right? So for instance, if the user has signed in, we may say welcome Peter if we got the name, or if the user is not signed in yet, if it's a guest, we'll say just welcome to the app. I don't know. Yeah? So I got my file, which is empty, and now look at what I'm doing, guys. I'm creating a new file called welcome.test.javascript. You see, I got a file, the source file welcome, and I got another file with the same name, but with a .test suffix. That's the de facto standard way of orchestrating your test. Yeah? Whenever you have a JavaScript file, you have another file in the same folder with the same name and just adding the .test suffix. Some developers, they use spec, yeah, instead of test. That's fine. Okay? So there isn't a single way of testing. There are many different variations and details. Yeah. So that makes everything just a bit more complicated. But in reality, we're just talking about details. Yeah. Whether they call it .test.js or .spec.js, that's not gonna make a big difference. All right. So then what? Then it's very important to have a good setup. Yeah. You have to feel comfortable with your testing environment. When you are moving home and you want to set up your new desktop, you buy probably a chair, you buy a table, you spend probably few minutes, if not hours, just making sure you feel comfortable with the setup, right? So that's pretty much the same thing. Dealing with testing is sometimes very complicated, so it's very important to feel very comfortable. Thankfully, if that any helps, thanks to Facebook, thanks to Create React App, we don't have to install any plugins or anything. So thankfully, just running one command will trigger the test, and that's amazing, because sometimes the setup of your testing environment could be a bit challenging. Yeah, so at least for beginners it's fantastic, because with Create React App you got all the utilities, plugins, and dependencies set up for you. All right, so I got two files, welcome and welcome.test. There is nothing on them yet, empty files. So what I will do is, and that's my personal setup, that's what I've been following for, I don't know, 12 13 years now, is I keep my tests on the left hand side, and then you keep the source file on the right. Yeah, because we do TDD. So first of all, we'll write a test on the left, and then we'll write a piece of code on the right. At the bottom, as you can see, I got my my terminal. Why got the terminal? Because here is where I'm going to run my tests. So how do you run the test in a Create React App application? Well, you simply type npm run test. Yeah? And once you do that, it will try to run the test. It will scan your source folder, trying to find tests. Look at the message: no test found. Yeah, which makes sense, because obviously we got nothing. Yeah, it's the first time we are writing a test. So let's present the testing structure on the test hand side. We have to use some keywords, so you just have to get used to the syntax. So first of all, we can set up like the container of the test by typing describe, and describe will receive two arguments. The first one is the title of the test. Like for instance, the title of my test will be welcome function. Yeah, I'm just specifying what the test is about. And then you receive a callback function. Do you remember, guys, callback functions? So describe is a higher order function. Why describe is a higher order function? Because it receives two arguments. The first one, string with the title of the test, and the second one is the function that will run your test. So what do we do inside of the callback function? We pass another structure called IT. And inside of the IT structure, or it, then you set up the title of the test. So for now, I'll do something silly, because I just want to make sure that my testing environment works correctly. So I pass a dummy title for now. I will change it in a minute, of course. And then it's pretty much the same thing. You pass another callback function with whatever your test is about. So you see the structure is the same. Both describe and it are higher order functions with the same structure. On the first argument, you got the title. Describe is the title of your tests, yeah, the group, the title of everything, let's say, the heading. And then with it, the string is the title of that individual test. On the second argument, you have a callback function that will run your test. So now, how do we run the test? So the syntax looks something like that. You type expect, and then something, true, to be true. Something like that. You see? I expect true to be true. That is obviously truthy, right? Because true is the same as true. So notice found, press A to run all the tests. In theory, the test runner should be able to pick changes. So whenever you change a test, you don't have to run the test again because it will reload automatically. It's not the case. It's not the case. You can see I got no feedback here. Let me try to press A to run all the tests if it works. If it doesn't, I will restart everything. So it doesn't used to be that slow. Wait, what the hell is that? Yeah, I don't. Oh, I think that's because. Oh, right. I got a weird message here. I think that's because React is creating a default test for us. Yeah, you see, app.test. So here is where we start testing our React components. Obviously, because I've changed my, you see, I've changed my main app component, the test stopped working. So I'm gonna delete that weird default test because I don't want to play with it anymore. I just want to play with my tests. All right, so the next problem we have, and that was my fault, guys, is unfortunately by accident, I created the files outside of the SRC folder. You see, that was my fault. So let me do something. Let me kill the tests, the test runner, and let me move both my welcome and welcome.test inside of the SRC folder. Remember that all your assets, all your components, all your files, all your images, everything should be inside of the SRC folder. All right, no panic, guys, no panic. Let's start again. npm run test. And then let's see if now, at least I get, in theory, I should get one test pass, yeah? Because I got a single test, expect true to be true. Once again, it's not that slow. Tests should run in about 1 second or less than that. But now, because I'm streaming and everything, my laptop is struggling a bit. But look, pass, src, welcome.test.js, welcome function. You see, you got the stack trace. You got welcome function. That's the title of my spec. And then you got just testing, which is the title of my test. You see, that green tick means, hey, the test is okay. So I got one test pass, blah, 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 blah. So what happened, guys, if I change spec true to be false? Look, if I do spec true to be false, you will see in a second that the test will fail because true, you see, expected false, received true. Yeah, so that's obviously wrong. So this is pretty much a silly example just to make sure that our test runner reacts to our changes. So once we've done that, we can start testing our welcome component. So the ADIs. Let's create the first real test. The first real test is should return a generic welcome message if no user is provided. Yeah. So you see, I'm telling my readers what the welcome component should do. So now let's call get welcome method, and now let's display a message. Welcome to the app, exclamation mark, for instance. Yeah. So guys, the test fails, as you will see in a minute. Actually, this is not refreshed. That's not the last iteration because I'm not dealing with true and false anymore. However, that test won't work. So if I change something, test will run again, and that won't work. I don't want to spoil the results. Can anyone tell me why this test fails? Correct. That's correct, Panos. I call it welcome, but I call it get Panos. It's the same result, right? Where is that function? It's nowhere, right? It's nowhere. But that's the point about TDD. TDD means you always break your test. First of all, you break it. And then, once you break it, get welcome, return welcome to the app. Will this work or not? You think that will work? All right, let's pay attention to the stack trace of the test. If I scroll to the bottom, the test didn't work. Why didn't work? Get welcome is not defined. What that means? Can you help me to solve the problem, guys? Absolutely, guys. We got two files, so we definitely need to deal with import export. Do you remember? Export default, and then on the left hand side, import from wherever the file is. Yeah. And now let's pay attention to the result of that test. So now it's still failing. You see, I mean, I'll tell you something. At the moment, I don't think the test is picking the latest version of my changes. I think this is just because my laptop is suffering a lot because of all the streaming. Yeah, you shouldn't have that sort of issues, because look, it says get welcome is not defined. I believe, unless you can see I did something stupid, that now my get welcome function is defined. So if you think you are right, but your test is not actually picking that scenario, just do a silly change, like add a break line, something like that, and then try again. Once again, guys, you are not expected to have these issues. Yeah? This is just because my laptop is just on the edge. So if I run it again, you see, now my test passes. Yep. No. It's automatic. It's like npm start, Adam. When you start coding every day in the morning, how many times you type npm start? Probably just once, right? Or npm start dev or whatever, the command you run to start your server. You type it once and that's it. Because then when you change your app, npm will pick the changes for you, right? So that's the same process. You just type npm run test once, and then as you can see at the bottom, the process is still running. It's the same as the server. If you run with npm start, the testing server is running. So whenever I change something, the test will pick the changes for us. So we don't have to type npm test all the time, not at all. Yeah? Cool. I mean, that's the spirit of TDD, guys. You do your test. Obviously, it breaks your app because you don't have any functionality supporting that test yet. Then you write the test. Sorry, you write the function, and then the test should work. So let me tell you why we do that. Even though, once again, guys, if I don't manage to convince you, I don't really care, because I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult to convince someone to use TDD without experiencing it by yourself. However, let me try at least. The advantage of TDD is you only code what you need. You know, guys, when you are dealing with a coding challenge, in many occasions you told me, oh, the code you wrote or the eventual solution was much easier than I thought. Yeah, when we check what you've done, sometimes you write a lot of code, yeah, to write the solution. And generally speaking, the solution is much simpler. So TDD drives you towards the most simple solution to your algorithms. Why? Because the code we write is the minimum to satisfy the test requirement. Okay? So TDD has proved to be very useful to simplify your code. Okay? So that's the first reason. We go step by step. Even though if we already know what we want to build next, if we already know that, for instance, if we receive a user, Peter, we want to say, welcome, Peter. We know that that's what we want to build. We are not rushing. So we are building the components step by step. Yeah. So let me add a very personal note here. You will see, guys, you will come across in many occasions people writing that sort of wording. Should do something, should return, should. I hate the word should, right? When talking about tests. If you write should, once again, that may be very personal. No one except you don't agree on that. But personally, when I see someone writing should, it gives me the feeling the person is not convinced about what he or she is doing. Why should? Why the hell should? Yeah, that's not the way it works, right? It's not should. It's like must. Like, guys, be bold, be crystal clear with your thoughts. Must return, or If you want to simplify your syntax, yes, hey, returns. Yeah, that's it. Returns a DNA welcome. It's like should or shouldn't. No. It returns it. That's it. Yeah. Cool. Any questions so far, guys? Hello? How can you practice? Well, following the same steps, Adam. So whenever you create a React component, you can extract part as a first step, at least. As a first step, my suggestion is when you create a React component, and that's something that you are doing all the time, right? So if I have a, for instance, you see, I got my component. So here, to display the title, yeah, I can have get welcome. So then I import get welcome from welcome.js, right? So now you can test the get welcome message. So that's the way you can practice. You create a new file, welcome.js, you create a new welcome.test.js, and then you deal with it. So that's the easiest way to practice. Because here we're talking just about JavaScript, just testing JavaScript, input, output. When I call a function, I expect that output. Yeah, we are not dealing with React. We are not dealing with React yet. Once again, I want you first of all to understand how testing works. I want you to be comfortable dealing with JavaScript tests because they are pretty simple compared to React. And once you feel comfortable with that, then you can move one step. You can move one step and then start testing with React. We'll talk about different types of testing in a future session. But for now, let's stick to JavaScript. So is there any question regarding what we've seen so far? Hello, guys. Is there anyone there? Yes. Yes. Testing server. Yeah, that's correct. Testing server. Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Looks like only. Okay, cool. Thank you, Panos. I appreciate it. So that was the first test, but now let's create. Yeah, Minji, go for it. Yeah, Minji. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yes, because do you remember, guys, when we talk about best practices, I recommended you to have one function, regardless of whether it's React or JavaScript, to have one function per file. Do you remember that? Because then we can use export default, whatever. So yeah, you go to one function. The function is exportable, is exported, so that means that other components may import it. So then the only thing we do is we import it from the test and we test it. Yep. Yes. 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 Yeah. Actually, that's what I'm gonna do next. Yeah. So let's do that. I mean, that was just the first test, right? That was the first test. That's the default use case scenario where we said welcome. We don't have any user. It's the first time a user is dealing with the app, so we said welcome to the app. But now let's create a new test. Returns. Or returns a specific user, specific welcome message if user is provided. I'm trying to keep some sort of consistency with my the title of my tests. And now look at the difference, guys. So now I'm gonna call expect get welcome, but this time I'm going to pass an argument. First name Peter, to be welcome to the app, Peter. You see? I can maybe add some break lines for readability purposes. So if now I call get welcome function passing an argument, which is the user details, for instance, with the first name, then the welcome message will be a bit more specific. So now my question is, will this test pass or not? Why not, Adam? Or Panos? There is no first name. So the function on the right-hand side is not dealing with that use case scenario yet. Yeah. So once again, that's the point about TDD. You create a new function and then you test it. It won't work. You see? Guys, expected. Welcome to the app, Peter. Receive, welcome to the app. Yeah. The get welcome function is ignoring my request of this telling Peter welcome to the app. So the reason why we do that is, guys, what happens if I run a new test and it doesn't fail? So the test works. What happens is there is no value. That test is bullshit, right? Any new test should break your app. Because if the new test doesn't break your app, it means it's testing nothing. Yeah? So that's important. You write the new test, you break the app, and now, of course, we can deal with that problem on the right-hand side. So I got the user. So then I can write some sort of, I don't know, maybe some ternary operator. So if I got user dot first name, then I will display welcome to the app, and then user dot first name. Yep. Will the test pass now, guys, or not? I have a typo. Brilliant. All right, let's fix the typo. Thank you. Will it work now? Okay, let's have a look. So let's scroll down. All right, so user, interesting. It didn't work, and that was my fault. So I cannot complain about the test runner. Why it didn't work? Cannot read properly first name of undefined. Can you tell me what the hell that means? Why does it say cannot read property first? Yeah, but I'm passing the information here. I'm passing a user object. So why does it say cannot read first name of undefined? In other words, why user is undefined, guys? Let me give you a hint. The problem is on the first test. That's correct. So we've changed the code on the right-hand side, and by changing the code, we broke the first test. We broke it. Why? Because on the first use case scenario, we are not passing any data. We are not passing any user at all. However, if we don't pass any user is undefined. Undefined.first name throws an error. That's the beautifulness about testing. By accident, guys, I broke the app. I broke it because if at some point I'm trying to display welcome to guest users, they will get an error. So I'm throwing an error to new users. That's horrible. I didn't notice, guys, I broke the app. But thankfully, one of my tests spotted the problem. So I noticed I was about to break the app before anyone else. Yeah. Tests have saved my ass many times in my career, guys, from doing big mistakes in production. Yeah? So thanks to the test, I can see the first reaction is surprise. Like, oh, that's not possible. How are my tests failing? That's the first reaction, surprise. But then, after 30 seconds later, if you pay attention, you realize, oh, of course. Oh, I was about to break my app because my algorithm on the right-hand side was assuming that I always receive a user. But that may not be true. We definitely need to contemplate the scenario where no user is provided at all. Of course, once we realize about the potential bug we were just about to introduce, we can simply do something like that, right? If I got a user, yeah, and I got a user with first name, then display welcome to the app Peter, Mari, or whatever. If not, then just display a generic welcome to my app message. And you can see, guys, look, boom, both tests are passing. So, do you have any questions? So obviously now it's up to us to continue. Dan, I think you had a question. Maybe not. That's all right. Yes. Yes. In theory, Dan, once you write a test, the test shouldn't change. The test is valid unless obviously business wants to change the requirements of your app. Yeah. But if the business requirements haven't changed, look, did I change the first test? No, I didn't, because the test was valid. What I had to do is to change the code on the right hand side to accommodate that test. So the test is valid, and so the function on the right should definitely satisfy the requirement of the test. That's all right. Anything else, guys? Any questions? So I'll answer that question in a few minutes. I'll show you how properly tested a component is. So I'll show you afterwards. I'm going to show you a visual tool to tell you to answer your question. So for now, let's add a final test. So imagine that because of the nature of our applications, some users don't have any first name. However, they do have a last name. Yeah, for instance, as an example. So let's create a new function. So it returns a specific welcome message if user is provided. So you see now I need to rewrite the title of my test a bit because the last two tests have the same title. So on the first one, I want to check against the first name. On the second one, I want to check against the last name. So let's rewrite our test a bit. So returns a specific welcome message if first name is provided, and then returns a specific welcome message if last name is provided. So then let me copy the test. So now I'm gonna change it a bit. I don't have any first name, however, I got the last name. And then I want to say welcome to the app. I don't know, Mr. or Mrs. I don't. Yeah, that's not relevant. Yeah, I don't want to do this to cover all, these tiny details. Smith. Yeah. So now my obvious question is: will that test pass or not, and why? Why not? Yeah, correct. So that test will fail. Why the test will fail? Let me show you. As Ebrima said, if I scroll down, you see, do I have a user in the last use case scenario? Yes, I have a user. Here's my user. However, do I have a first name? No, I don't have any first name. I just have the last name. So then, as Ebrima said, that condition won't work So it will jump to the else statement. Welcome to the app. Yeah? So welcome to the app is not what we want to display. That's what the function is returning in that use case scenario. We want to display welcome to the app, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So we can obviously add a new condition now. So if I go to user and user dot last name, then what I will display is welcome to the app. Welcome to the app, Mr. Mrs. last name. Yeah, something like that. So now if we run that code, no exclamation, yeah, but that's okay. That's correct. Let's add it on the left hand side. So let's run it again. Last name. See if I did something wrong. User first name, last name. Yeah, that code looks right to me. Waiting. Yeah, you see. So now all the tests pass. So I'm essentially covering all the angles of my app. I'm covering 3 different use cases scenarios. What happens if I don't have any user? What happens if I have the first name of the user? And what happens if I got the last name of the user? At this stage of the journey, personally, I may decide to refactor my code a bit because I'm not very happy about it. I mean, you may like it, that's fine. I'm not very happy because I'm checking user twice. At this point, because this is getting more complicated, I'm tempted to use if else. Yeah. And now, thankfully, because I got a bunch of tests, if by refactoring my code I break it by accident, that's fine because my test will hopefully spot the problem. Yeah. So you see, thanks to testing is not just about ensuring the quality of the software you write today. If someone checks my code 6 months later, the test will still be there. So they will check that everything is correctly set up. So let me use if else. If I got a user, we'll see. Else, return, welcome to the app. Yeah. So I'm not doing anything new. I'm just changing the structure of my code. So if user.first name, then return welcome first name, whatever. And then else return whatever. Yeah. I find that code on top a bit easier to read personally, but once again, that's up to you guys. That's up to you. The important thing here is, hey, I've changed my code. For sure, I've changed my code. Is it still working? I mean, if it fails, if any of these tests failed, I know it's my fault. I know it's because of the refactoring, because I'm not trying to change the behavior of my application. You see, all the tests are passing, so I'm somehow comfortable with the change. Any questions, guys? So we'll do a new session about testing, I think on the next week. Try to make it on the next week. And we'll do 2 things. First of all, I would like to refactor, or I would like to talk about the scalability. I mean, obviously now you don't really care about the scalability, guys. Now the important thing is to, get used to testing. That's the important thing. However, it is true that at some point, that will be a piece of cake for you, right? At some point, you'll have to write, guys, I've been working on projects with, I don't know, thousands and thousands of unit tests. Yeah. So at some point, it's important to have a strategy towards scaling your tests. So next week I'll think about how to actually deal with more complex use cases scenarios, and I will also like to introduce BDD. You may have heard about BDD, behavior driven development, and I will also like to talk about different testing alternatives. But once again, I'll do that on the next week. To wrap up this session, let me show you something. Adam, he asked first, how do we know how many tests we need to create, something like that, right? Let me show you something. Let me kill the test runner. And now let me open it again. Let me show you a trick, guys. Let me show you a trick. Thanks to Create React App, we can use a tool. It's one of my favorite tools. I don't know why that tool is not very popular, to be honest, but it's a fantastic tool. The tool is called Istanbul JS. So Istanbul is a very nice tool that tells you what your test coverage is. In other words, it's telling you how well you are testing your components. Okay? And that's very valuable. That's very valuable because if I let me present you an example. If you land, imagine that you are hired by a company as a tech lead, and you join a project, and you want to see how good the test coverage is on that project. How do you know that? How do you know? Because essentially, this is telling you the risk of introducing a bug in your platform, somehow. Because if a line of code is not covered, that means that if there is a bug on that line, no one is going to spot it until a customer comes across that line of code. So when you run the test, look at the syntax because it's a bit special. Instead of running npm run test, you can do npm run test space 2 dashes space. You see that's a bit weird. 2 dashes again, and then you type coverage. So if you type that command, npm run test space 2 dashes space dash coverage, that will run the test again, but this time it will bind with Istanbul. And because it will run with Istanbul, I will get a report. It should get a report. Where is my report? Running coverage. I think it's still work in progress. I think. I hope it's. The bottom. No. It was work in progress, guys. It was work in progress. It was work in progress. So you see, that's pretty interesting, guys. That's pretty interesting. So obviously, I got a very simplistic project, but that's nice. Look. So what Istanbul reported is, hey, you have 2 JavaScript files. First of all, the main app component, and then you have the welcome component. Yeah, so you got 2 components. So obviously, the first thing is app.js. You see red color, obviously, right? Because we are not testing that component. We don't have any test coverage. So to me, if I'm running a real piece of software, that's an alarm. Like, hey, guys, hey team, timeout. Why the hell the main component is not tested? So it's a very, very easy way to visually detect where the potential problems are on our application. Because if there is a bug on the app component, how do we know that? No one will spot the problem because we don't have any tests covering that file. However, purely talking about the component we wrote, welcome, look at how sexy this is, guys. It's saying that all my statements, all the branches, all the functions, all the lines, everything is correctly tested. What happened, guys? Please pay attention what happened if I remove the first test. Okay? If I remove the first test, you will hopefully see that the test coverage now reports different numbers because line number 9 is not tested at all. You see, welcome.js, now I'm only covering 80% of the lines, and I think the last column is probably the most relevant one. Uncovered lines. You can see that line number 9 is not covered. In other words, what happens if I do? Imagine that I got my redundancy, I got fired by the company, and I'm a scammer, and I want to say, I don't know, something very dirty, something, whatever, yeah? Imagine that I do something like that. Will my tests spot what I've done? No, clearly not. Clearly not, because no one is testing that line. Yeah? You see, all my tests are passing. However, obviously, if we re-enable our test, if someone does that, at some point, you will say, what the hell? You're so stupid son of a what the hell? Who did that, right? And then, of course, you can have some sort of accountability about who is touching your software. So Istanbul, very useful. It's one of the things that in the long term it facilitates the process of dealing with code. Guys, when you do commit and push, you can establish some hooks. You can essentially you can do things like, hey, I want to block any commit which test coverage is below a given threshold, like for instance 80%. Yeah. So if someone creates a new component and is not properly tested, that person won't be able to push that file. Yeah. It goes without the scope of the bootcamp to explain how to do these things, right? But FYI, I mean, these things exist, and it's a very, very elegant way to make sure that any new contribution to your source code satisfies some standards. Having a test coverage of 100% doesn't imply your software is never gonna fail. Yeah. So this is not true. But at least I think it's a good line of defense. At least as a first really good line of defense. Guys, that was it from my side. So any question, any final thoughts about testing? Yes. Yes. It comes out of the box. Yes, you don't have to install it, which is fantastic. Yep. Yeah. Give me a sec. Yeah, I'll do it in a second. I'm setting the snippets on Slack, guys, in case you want to take them as a reference. Yeah. So you got the file structure. Yeah. Yes. The the yes. Yes. I see what you mean. Yeah, that's because that's a test. So VS Code understood that's the JavaScript file, but it's a testing file, so it changed the color to orange. Yeah, it's VS Code syntax, VS Code highlighting syntax. That's a good question. Not hopefully yes. I'm not sure. Let's try that. Yeah, you see. Yeah, that's correct. This test is still highlighted. Anything else, guys? That's all right. Thank you, Panos. Anything else? Yep. Guys, that's up to you. If you want my personal suggestion, my personal advice, the sooner you start testing, the better. And how can you start testing? Well, my first advice, that was pretty simple, guys. So once again, you got your main component, right? app.js. Just do something like that. On the title, you see the title, instead of hard coding the title like welcome, whatever, then instead of doing that, create or extract the functionality into an external function and then test it. So the more you test, the better. Yeah? Don't forget something. Some employers, not every employer, but some employers, they will check your code on GitHub, right? So having tests versus not having tests, that may make a difference. I don't think this is going to be vital for a junior, but it's a good way to put your balls on the table. Yeah. Even if a company is not expecting you to be good at testing, you prove that you've got some testing skills that will be highly appreciated. Because don't forget something. Sometimes teaching a junior developer to test is harder than teaching a junior developer to code. Yeah? So having that tick, or there is some basics about how to test, that to me this makes a big difference. So don't underestimate how important testing is, even though that may not be absolutely vital in order to break into tech. Anything else, guys? Yeah, I mean, as usual, we covered that already a couple of 3 weeks ago, right? When we talk about best practices, if you remember what I told you, is you create a new folder, and the new folder contains your component like movie, and then the movie component will have everything, right? So we'll have the movie, the React file, it will have the CSS file, right? So we can create movie.css. And now, because we're talking about testing, so if you have a JavaScript file with some utils, you can have movie dot, or you can rename if you want to movie utils, where you have some functions. And then if you do that, you can also have movie utils.test.js or .spec.js. Yeah? Of course. So all the relevant files of a component should be encapsulated, should be wrapped within the same folder. Cheers. Anything else, guys? Cool. You got the snippets on Slack in case you want to start practicing a bit. Apart from that, thank you for watching, guys. See you soon.